Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Dave, and this is episode 4. And I want to thank you for, and wherever you are, whatever you're doing, thank you for coming and joining me today and listening to me tear down the Sharks. So the first thing I want to start with is actually a kind of a redaction of last week. I want to fix something that I said that was completely wrong. I kind of made a big deal about Timothy Liljegren's name. So apparently, the way he pronounced it on Sharks Instagram when he introduced himself, it is Liljegren. Randy Hahn also kind of confirmed that his name is pronounced Liljegren. Even hearing him for years with the Leafs, apparently they called him Liljegren. It just goes to show you why people probably hate the Leafs. They probably just said, "What's your name?" And he said Liljegren, and they go, "All right, Liljegren it is." And that's the way it's been for 5 years, and that's something I've been listening to the whole time. So my mistake. It's actually going to be pronounced Liljegren from now on, and now that's how we're going to say it moving forward. Another thing to talk about that happened this week, Walman was scratched, and what would end up not being a big deal because of the way it was announced originally, it was kind of ominous, and it led to speculation, so the Sharks needed to clear it up. What happened was Jake Walman missed a couple of games this week against Minnesota due to, and he had an injury apparently, and he has to go to some treatments every day the Sharks have set and scheduled for all the players that are injured, and he missed one of the days. So what happened was Borsovsky just wanted to kind of, set the culture straight in San Jose to make sure that, every player is held accountable. You have to do what you're scheduled to do being a player. You can't miss one treatment day, whatever it is. You have to do what the team asks of you. So it was kind of just a message that was sent. And Shang Penn, the beat reporter for San Jose, cleared that up. Walman explained what happened, and obviously it wasn't a big deal. He practiced. So really it was just a small thing, just something that, even though it was small, it needs to be addressed, and just to make sure the culture is being set for these young kids for the future. And Walman even took responsibility for it. He said, "No, this is what it was. Not a big deal. We still practice with the team." And that was kind of, swept under the rug. But really, it just goes to show you how even if you just bring up something without all the details, people are going to be left to speculation of what happened. The fact that the Sharks acquired Walman for pretty much nothing, for future considerations, and they got a second-round pick from Detroit, people started assuming, well, it must be a personality thing. Yzerman must know something. Turns out it was something really small. I wouldn't think much of it moving forward. Hopefully that, he won't do that again, and we'll continue seeing him because he's been our best defenseman easily. So, hopefully that's going to be all swept under the rug moving forward. So, going to the actual games this week, the Sharks had a pretty light schedule. They played at home for 2 games. They only had, they played Columbus on Tuesday, and they played Minnesota on Thursday. They were 1-1, which is kind of an expected result, or a hopeful result, with the Jackets being near the bottom of the league this year. The Sharks, we're hoping the Sharks get a win, and they actually pulled one out. And with Minnesota being a wagon this year, and Kaprizov playing on a whole other galaxy, forget another level. Minnesota was expected to be the Sharks based on where the Sharks are and where Minnesota is. So really, coming out of this week, just looking from a broad spectrum, it's a pretty big win. The Sharks are 1-1, so it's not too bad. And the Sharks, looking at the whole season, Sharks are 4-9-2 with 10 points. They're last in the division. They were second last in the league until yesterday when Nashville won against Utah, and they jumped them up 5 spots. So now the Sharks are last place in the league, last place in the division. But looking at broad number, 4-9-2, it looks pretty bad. But really, looking over the last 2 weeks, they actually have 4 wins and 2 losses. So over the last 2 weeks, you see the Sharks kind of are getting things together, building things up. They're actually looking pretty good. So things are moving forward, are going to be looking better. Another positive to talk about is obviously Celebrini is back. He has a 2-goal game against the Wild, even though the Sharks lost. He has 4 points in 3 games overall, and obviously his first game back with Columbus, he looked a little bit rusty. It's expected. He's 18 years old. He was coming off an injury. Hasn't played in a month, so, you kind of expect to be a little shaky. But he really showed, why he's going to be just really a special kid against Minnesota with those 2 goals he scored, which we're going to obviously break down when we get to the games. But just a couple of positives to note, Even another thing is that the Sharks had 18 goals for, 17 goals against. Pretty close. It's not like the Sharks are dominating goals for, goals against, but just the fact that they're above 500 in terms of that stat with goals for, goals against, I would say that that's a positive again moving forward, and ignoring the first about 11 games of the season. I would say that this is all, something to look forward to for the league, the team as we move forward. So that's something that positives. In terms of negatives that I wanted to break down, there are a few things that we need to go through here over the last week and just what's been going on with the Sharks here. Number one, the defensive pairing of Ferrero and Ruda it's not working. They just don't work well together. Mostly, I would say it's on Ruda. He just really feels like he's a step behind he used to be. Ferrero, he needs a skilled guy to play with, it seems like. Back in the day, he had Brent Burns in his rookie years, and he was still a good shutdown guy while Brent Burns was out doing his walkabouts and scoring his goals and skating around. Ferrero would be a pretty decent presence, staying back and trying to maintain, something while there's that puck-moving defenseman that he plays with that can get things going. He can be the one that kind of shuts everything else down, which is what he's capable of. But you put someone like Ruda, who's slower, he's also a defensive defenseman. It just doesn't work out well. And we saw Ferrero and Ceci together, and even that doesn't really work well. It looks like they're both kind of like lost a little bit. There's a couple of goals you could see them together, and you're like, they missed their guy, and the goals get scored. So what I'd like to see, maybe Ferrero paired up with a Liljegren or a Thompson, just someone who's more of a puck mover. And Ferrero, I think, would stand to benefit with that, just because he would actually be more of he'd focus on the shutting down part, and you can give it to somebody else who can skate the puck up, skate the puck out. And even though Thompson's a young kid and Liljegren is not really, like, he's known for his defensive lapses, it still would be an upgrade over Ruda and Ceci. So I would like to see that kind of moving forward. Another negative was just all the black marks from the Wild game that we saw. We saw a lot of defensive mishaps from Ruda, Ferrero, actually the whole team. They missed their marks, and board battles they should be winning against players on the defensive zone. They'll lose them, and then it allows the other team to kind of cycle the puck around and get some kind of a good shot to the point or something like that. So this is something that they need to work on. So even during the Columbus game, even though the Sharks did win, it was really Vanacek that won it for them. The Sharks allowed 51 shots from a team that's really considered a bottom-feeding team, just to show you the holes that are on this team that really need to be addressed. So that's something that the Sharks need to work on there. Something that with Walman coming back in the lineup, because he did miss the last couple of games, we should see these fixed a little bit. What I'd like to see moving forward in terms of the pairs, Walman and Liljegren should play together. I think Liljegren, he's 25 years old. We know what he is now. He can be a first pairing defenseman for a team like the Sharks because, we're rebuilding. He does have some defensive lapses, but at least he can generate some offensive chances. I'd like to see what Walman and Liljegren do together on the team. Ferrero, maybe pair him with Jack Thompson. I know Jack Thompson's a rookie, but he can move the puck pretty well. He's looking like his advanced stats are pretty good in terms of getting chances on net, chances to score. I think putting them together would give him a better chance. And in the bottom pairing, Ceci's still a defenseman that I would like to keep on the lineup. And Thrun, even though he's been okay, he's had some bad moments, keep him on the bottom pairing with Ceci. At least you can kind of have those guys skate together. You have some experience. You still have some of that youth from Thrun. And Ruda would be the odd man out. I think that he's kind of done. You even put him in the waivers and see if we can bring a young kid up. I know people are talking about how McMadoulin was injured this year and he should be coming up soon. But watching him against the Colorado Eagles last night, I still think that he needs to use his size more. I think he needs to learn a little bit to use that as an advantage. He's got a great stick. He's still very good at moving the puck and everything, but I would like to see him get better at just using his body in terms of battling people on the boards and trying to get the puck out of other people's possession. So I don't know. I think he'd probably do better, learning more in the AHL with this better Barracuda team. But that's something that we have to just basically see moving forward what Warsofsky is going to do. In my opinion, I don't think he's ready to move up yet. Maybe a couple of games here and there. But I'd like to see what we have going with these pairings that we have now to get some chemistry together. All right, let's sink our teeth into the games of the week that happened with the Sharks. Obviously, like I said before, there was a light schedule. The Sharks only had 2 games in the Shark Tank. So, the Sharks had at least a little bit of rest before the huge schedule they have ahead of them, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But let's break down the Columbus Blue Jackets game in San Jose on Tuesday, where the Columbus Blue Jackets lost 2-1 to the Sharks in overtime. But they did outplay the Sharks, which we'll break into more. But at first, I want to just talk about the pregame notes coming into this game, because there was a lot of news coming up. First was the biggest one was Celebrini was back after a month from his injury that he was off. The Sharks obviously wanted to be cautious and take their time with him, letting him heal and get better. And also Ty Dellandrea was returning as well from an injury as well. So by bringing 2 guys back in, the Sharks naturally had to bring 2 guys down. So that left Cardwell and Gushchin to be sent back to the AHL. I'm obviously okay with this move. They're both young. They both had a little taste of the show. First of all, Gushchin, he looked pretty good in the NHL. He was not getting any points, but you could see he was generating some stuff. He was that a flashy guy. You could see that offensive potential, but he just couldn't really get the finish there. I think that he's going to obviously have a better chance to develop, and with that skill, he'll be able to help the Barracuda with their potential Calder Cup run this year. So I think, give him a little taste of the show, maybe bring him back up in another injury later in the season will be beneficial for him. Cardwell as well had a couple of games for the Sharks last week. So you could see that hard at work ethic that he has for what he brought with the Barracuda this year. He had that with the Sharks. Again, no offensive, no points really there for him, but he was very good for the Sharks when he played, so I have no complaints about that. You could see that he's going to probably be a good, maybe, energy guy down the road. I would like to see that. But he'd be better used right now for the Barracuda. More minutes just to get better and just to, refine his game before he's ready. I like this move. It balances everything out. And finally, the one piece of news that was kind of overlooked a bit was LeBank's return to the Shark Tank. His history with the Sharks is kind of, murky at best. He does have those positives with that Vegas game in overtime, that historic game. The Sharks' big comeback. He had 4 assists, and I think the contract is really what hampered him after that. He did do something for the Sharks. People forget. The 1 year after that, he was a free agent, and he could have asked for a lot of money, but the Sharks were kind of cash-strapped. They were still looking to compete. After signing Eric Carlson for that monster contract, he took a discount. He took a $1 million bet-on-me contract, and then he ended up getting, that longer contract for the Sharks. So I guess that's what left the bad taste in everyone's mouth. He never really lived up to that contract after that. He's a good guy. He's a decent player. Maybe not worth what his contract was when the Sharks paid him, but I think that we should still remember him with positive memories as a Shark, and it was nice to see him back in the tank, and he's still doing fairly well for the Columbus Blue Jackets, which is nice. So let's get an actual game here. The Sharks did win 2-1 in overtime with a beautiful goal by Wenberg. It was just a nice little deep ground, 3 guys, and he just sniped it top corner, which is absolutely beautiful. But the Sharks let in 50 shots on goal. The defense was pretty much atrocious there, and the Sharks even had a terrible time trying to get good shots on net. That's one thing they need to really focus on there. It's really been bad overall in terms of defense, but this was just, if it wasn't for Vanacek, this probably would have been a blowout from the Blue Jackets. No fooling, because Vanacek had to make some insane saves. Some of them were 1, 2, 3 shots in front of him. The Sharks would always let a defenseman screen him and everything like that. It was just one of those games where nothing was going well for the defense at all. There's a lot of mental mistakes, but Vanacek really, really played out of his mind good, which made him earn that second start against Minnesota, which we'll break down in a little bit. Celebrini looked kind of, he looked okay. You could see flashes of that skill that he had, but he was trying a little too many fancy moves he probably would get away with in college last year. There was a thing where he tried dangling around 3 Columbus guys, and he got tripped, but no call for a penalty. It was about 10 minutes into the first period. He's still kind of figuring things out, which he will. There's nothing to worry about. You saw that flash. He's going to figure out what he can and can't do in the NHL level, so I wouldn't really fault him for that, but he did look a little bit, stuttery there. Liljegren got the first penalty for the Sharks. It was a cross-check. Just something that he needs to obviously work on. The Sharks need to work on this whole game. There was 4 penalties that the Sharks got the whole time. I wasn't really happy with that, but it's still better than what it used to be, but there was a lot of just bad moves. Ruda got a delay of game penalty, puck over glass, things that you should be better at. It was kind of an unlucky little flip, but at the same time, you shoot that puck a little bit lower in the glass, you don't get that problem there. The Sharks didn't really produce enough. There was a couple of good chances. The Will Smith goal to Jack Thompson's first career goal, that was really nice. It was a nice cross-ice pass. You could see that vision that Will Smith had. Mind you, there was some sticks that probably, in an NHL game, maybe with a better team, that probably would have picked that off. It wasn't a perfect pass that kind of fooled everybody, but that vision that Will Smith had with that little open space that they took advantage of with the Columbus Blue Jackets falling asleep, and Jack Thompson had a wide open net to score, which is very, very nice. But the one thing that the Sharks always keep doing is the Sharks would always get a goal, and then right after, the other team would respond with a goal themselves. Happened again. Marchenko would get a chance. Ferraro basically was all alone for a 2-on-1. Couldn't do anything about it. Marchenko would score. But that's basically what we always see, right? The Sharks really need to work on holding down the fort and not turtling too much, but at the same time not being too aggressive and giving up too many open chances as well, which is in this case what it was with giving that 2-on-1. Looking overall, that's the power plays. Like, at least the Sharks are getting better because of all the penalties they've been giving. They're getting a lot better at just killing penalties. There's three penalties that they gave for that Columbus had a chance to stop them with, but the Sharks stopped killed all the penalties, and they also had 4 power play chances, but they did not score in any of them either. Another thing I wanted to bring up is William Eklund. So he was the odd man out with Celebrini coming in. Eklund was actually demoted from the first line to the second line. So now you have Granlund, Celebrini, and Toffoli on the first line, and the second line was Eklund, Wenberg, and Zetterlund. Big picture, looking at that, you could say, okay, well now the offense is spread out. You have Eklund's skill down the second line to help out with Wenberg, because he's not really he's not a flashy guy, although he did have a really nice goal, but he kind of would balance that out a little bit more. But what I didn't like about it is that Eklund, Granlund, and Toffoli had such great chemistry all month. Why would you tear that apart? Because they all seem to work very well together. I mean, Granlund was a lot of the driver of those chances, but I think that you kind of would help Eklund's development if you kept that there, and then maybe slot in Celebrini in the second line with Wenberg and Zetterlund, because Wenberg's he's shown at least he can win a lot of faceoffs over the last few weeks. Maybe you keep Celebrini in the basic faceoffs, like the low important faceoffs, and then swap Wenberg and take the more important faceoffs. That's kind of what I would like to see more. Let Celebrini kind of ease himself into back in the NHL, but obviously that's not what Warsofsky wanted. I think that would have been better for Eklund, but in terms of Eklund maybe going to the second line, you can teach him to say, you're not going to play with the best players all the time. We want you to be the one to generate these high potential chances for the Sharks. So let's see how you do in the second line. But I'm kind of torn between either way. I think with this kind of a team, you want to see that first line with the chemistry work together, and then everyone else kind of figure that out. But at the same time, because Eklund's still young, you can want him to learn that kind of like responsibility that you're not always going to play with the best players. You should be the one driving the best play, so maybe have him going up and down. But obviously we saw that did hurt him against the Wild, which will move forward too. Eklund did have a good game against Columbus, even during overtime. He did everything he could to try and get a goal. He blocked a lot of shots. He looked really good in that game, but I would just like to see that first line stick together, just because they had that chemistry, and maybe Celebrini, play with other guys. But in the end, let's just get to the overtime period. There's a lot of back and forth, and Wenberg had a beautiful play. He deked around 3 Columbus players. He went left, then right, and then the defenseman kind of came at him, and he pulled back and then sniped it top corner, pretty much from the high slot. It was a very beautiful shot, kind of unexpected for someone like Wenberg, but the Sharks would end up winning 2-1 with Columbus outshooting them 50-27, meaning that Vanacek had a 49 save game. It was insane. Vanacek is easily the first star of that game, and the Sharks kind of got away with one there, but it was a win, an expected win, or a hopeful win against a bottom-feeding team, which the Sharks need to climb up to respectability in points. Like I said, the Sharks aren't going to be, playoff performers or anything like that, but you want to see them to have, a decent winning record, and especially in the Shark Tank, people are paying their hard-earned tickets to see the Sharks play and win some games, so that was something that could get, Sharks fans a little bit lit up and excited. All right, their second game of the week was against the Minnesota Wild in the Shark Tank. They would end up losing 5-2. Minnesota outshot them 31-26. This is one of those games that the Sharks did not expect to win at all. Just looking at where the Minnesota Wild are just right now, this is as of today, not going into the game. They are 10-2 with 22 points. They only have 2 regulation losses, 2 overtime losses. They're really playing well. The only one they're second place to in their division against the Winnipeg Jets, who's having literally a historic season. After last night, they're 14-1. Like no other NHL team has started the season, 14 wins and 1 loss. So, but that being said, the Minnesota Wild are still an incredible team. Kaprizov is on a whole other level. He's finding this new gear. He's leading the whole league in points right now with he was leading the league. I guess McKinnon now has took over. I just took a look at the stats now. Kaprizov has 27 points, which is still remarkable. He's second to Nathan McKinnon with 20. Kaprizov has 27 points. Nathan McKinnon has 29 points. But he's got 9 goals, 18 assists. He's a plus 13. Kaprizov is literally the real deal, and it looks like he's kind of finding that next gear, which is something we hope to see with Celebrini and Will Smith in year 2 and 3 as well. I think this is Kaprizov's 4th year, if I'm not wrong. So he looked good his first few seasons, but he's figuring things out. As it shows you, it takes time to get to that next level, and it's his actual 5th season. So yeah, it took him that little bit of time. He's 27 years old, but he's figured things out now, and we're hoping to see that from Celebrini and Will Smith, because being the Sharks podcast, we always got to turn it back to the Sharks, and you just like to see that players that they take their time, they might be making some progressive steps, but then there's always that one year they take that next level jump, and that is Kaprizov. But going back to the game here, the Sharks, we were expected to lose against Minnesota Wild. It wasn't really supposed to be. It was probably a scheduled loss looking for the coaching perspective here. Nothing more to say about that. But in the game itself, Vanecek started the game. I think he earned, obviously, another start after what he did on Tuesday. It's really interesting to see this little Blackwood-Vanecek, goalie duo back and forth, because the week before that you would have said, Blackwood's earned the start number 1 job, but now you'd argue Vanecek's the number 1 guy, and that's just a good problem to have for the Sharks, because one of these guys at the end of the season, maybe both, are going to get traded during the trade deadline. It's inevitable. Askarov will definitely make his way up, but with the way that both these guys are playing, the Sharks can't afford to have them both, especially with Askarov expecting to play next season. One of these guys is going to have to go for something, and if they're playing like this, it's going to be a lot easier to get something good for the Sharks' future, trading them away. So even though we were seeing some losses, it's good to see that. So Vanecek started the game, but the Wild would score right away. Bogosian ends up scoring 2 minutes and 22 seconds into the period, assisted by Chris Holm and Foligno. It was basically just a point shot, bounces off of Smith. Smith's foot kind of tips it in, and it goes in. So it's not Vanecek's fault. Maybe the Sharks should do better with all that traffic in net, but I would not say it's anything bad. Pucks on net, some good things happen. Nothing you could do. It's just a hockey play. Things happen. So in the second period, the way it started, Eriksson Ek had a goal that was called off. It looked like it was a very pretty goal, but what happened was he actually was the one that jumped offside. The goal was challenged. This is the kind of things we're seeing nowadays. If a goal is challenged by anybody, there's an eye in the sky for every team looking at everything, and instantly they'll go in the earpiece to the coach and say, "Hey, challenge this goal. This is it." It's most of the time when it's called now, it's pretty much the team is always right about it, because they really, really make sure that they don't want to get that power play, so that they're that penalty against them. So that goal was called off. It was right. And that actually would end up leading to Celebrini's second goal of the season, his first goal since returning. And it was just an absolute beauty. And Granlund actually drove this play. He goes all the way to the side of the net. He drives 2 guys to follow him, and he backhands it to the slot where Celebrini shoots it, and there's some traffic in front, but it's kind of a floppy bounce, but it bounced off a couple of guys, and Fleury doesn't see it. It kind of just goes to the net, and it's a goal, second goal for Celebrini. Very beautiful, nice to see. But not immediately after, give it a few minutes, obviously Minnesota would score again, because that's the way the Sharks are. They can't score a goal without having a response. Zuccarello would end up scoring that goal. Ruud and Ferrero were kind of looking at the puck, looking at the wrong guys, looking at the puck, and not paying attention to who was free and open, which was Zuccarello, and he had a wide open net to kind of just do what he wanted and score. The Ruud and Ferrero pairing, we gotta cut them. They don't work well together. Separate them right amount immediately. This is the kind of stuff that we don't want to see moving forward. Immediately after that, there was another Wild goal that was called offside. The Sharks coaching staff, again, great at calling that, and it would end up being taken back. It was a Hartman goal. Thompson and Liljegren lost sight of him, and he kind of got past them. He was in front of the net, and he scored, but luckily it didn't count. It was a point shot to Hartman, and Hartman kind of had all the time to kind of score there. Sharks were bailed out 2 times in a row. You'd think, okay, with this momentum, it's 2-1. The Sharks can use this as a kind of a way to get everything back. But right after that, Matt Boldy would score his 7th of the year. It was a really nice snipe. Eriksson Ek was screening Vanecek again. The defense not doing anything with the guys in front of the net. They need to be better at pushing guys out of the way. Maybe the Sharks need bigger bodies to do that. Obviously, Ferrero's a big guy, but he's not that big. Just got to work on cleaning up that stuff around there. So it would be 3-1 Minnesota, leaving it to the third period, which right immediately after, Kaprizov had a really nice chance. He's skated past the defense. Now this I wouldn't want to put past the put on the Sharks D just because Kaprizov is that fast and skilled. He puts the puck behind his legs. He tries to like flip it over. He doesn't know what to do, and Vanecek kind of catches that, and then it causes a little bit of chaos in front of the net, but luckily nothing would come of it. But 6 minutes into the period, Jonas Brodin would score his first goal of the season. It was a point shot, top corner. Ferrero and Ceci were outplayed behind the net and the boards. Basically, what happened was they were trying to battle for the puck behind Vanecek, and they were trying to get possession. But Minnesota would get the puck, cycle it back to Brodin, and Brodin would bomb it and get the goal and make it 4-1. So at this point, it's looking pretty bleak for the Sharks. You're seeing the same kind of stuff happen over and over again. The Sharks aren't getting any good shots on goal. They're being outplayed. But in 16 minutes into that period, Celebrini would get another goal. And it was a beautiful snipe. Just Granlund taking it onside from just outside to the right side. He passes it to Celebrini, who's wide open in the center. Top slot. He just snipes it top corner. Absolute beauty. You can see that shot he has is so dangerous. And he's only 18. This is only going to get better with, summers when he's going to get stronger and everything like that. And just looking forward to seeing what this kid's going to do. And yeah, he scores. It makes it 4-2. Celebrini gets his third. It was just a really, really good play. Granlund making things happen as always. He's just such a good player, which is why I still wanted to be with Eklund to help him out. But, whatever. I mean, we're probably going to see new chemistry with Granlund, Celebrini, and Toffoli. But, yeah, just a beautiful play all around from both those players. But in the end, the Sharks would not get anything out of that. It's still 4-2, and they would pull their goalie. Vanecek's in the bench, 6-on-5. But Matt Boldy would just speed past all the defense, score an empty netter for his 8th goal of the season, putting the game away to 5-2 for Minnesota. Expected loss for the Sharks, not really that big a deal. Just looking at the overall stats again, the Sharks at least were better at staying away from the box. They only had 3 penalties, but one of those penalties was a power play goal for Minnesota. They had 3 penalty chances themselves, power play chances themselves, but wouldn't score on any of them. They out-hit Minnesota 20-16. They blocked more shots, but when Minnesota had more shots on goal than Sharks, it's expected. And probably, again, 17 of those shots blocks were probably mostly from Ferrero. He's just a warrior out there, even though, he has his faults. But when it comes to actually that heart and will and the grit to go and block as much shots as he can, you can't hate him for that. Like, he's just a lovable guy. He's a great guy on the ice and off the ice. So, give him credit for that. In terms of giveaways, Sharks had more giveaways in this chance. Obviously, just losing to a skilled team, it's not a surprise. They had 18 giveaways to the Minnesota's 13. The takeaways were even at 5-5. The Sharks, expected loss, not that big a deal. They kind of licked their wounds here. They're now finished with their homestand. They're going to go on a road trip starting tonight against New Jersey, which we're going to break down a little bit. But first, let's look into the AHL's Barracuda. So the Barracuda, like the Sharks, had a pretty light schedule this week. They played the Iowa Wild last Sunday and lost 5-2. But the season series is tied 2-2. They also lost last Saturday to Iowa, but they won the games on October 19th and 20th. So, hey, being 500 against that team is not that bad a thing because they're actually not doing too bad in the standings. And the Sharks would play the Colorado Eagles last night and lost 3-2. The game itself, I watched a little bit of that game. The Barracuda looked okay. They had that, obviously look a lot better than the Sharks. They had a lot of offensive chances, but defensively, there's a lot of mistakes that I saw. The one thing that it looks like that what they're doing right now is that they're allowing themselves to make a lot of really bad defensive mistakes, and their offense is bailing them out because when they get the offensive chance in the rushes, there's a lot of skill there. But when you see how it kind of pans out, they need to really figure that out, especially in the NHL. And if they want to win a Calder Cup this year, they really got to work on it. Especially the Matthew Phillips goal, which looked really, really just awful. And I don't want to blame Askarov for it. But right after Podorowski would score for the Barracuda, so it almost feels like he bailed them out of their defensive flubs. And actually, another thing that came out of the game was Gushchin almost had his first Barracuda goal, but that was actually called off, which kind of sucks. He did get his first assist for that Podorowski goal, but unfortunately the other one was called off. Graf would get the other goal for the Barracuda. Just another skilled snipe play from him, and Podorowski would get another point for the game with the assist for that one. But in the end, near the end of the game, just in the third period, Colorado would end up scoring 2 and making it 3-2 and winning the game. The Barracuda really got to figure out how to figure out those defensive flubs, and a couple Askarov might want to want those goals back. But I wouldn't worry too much about this game. We'll see how the Sharks, or the Barracuda, I keep mixing them up. The Barracuda respond because they play Colorado again today. So we'll see if they can actually turn this thing around. All right, let's look ahead to the games for the Sharks this week. Just looking at the actual schedule for the Sharks this coming month, it's going to be pretty heavy. I hope the Sharks really enjoyed that break they had this last week where they only had 2 games at home. They're homestanded completely because they even played at home on Saturday. But this week they have 4 games. They're going to have an East Coast road trip. They're playing the Devils tonight. Tomorrow they have Philadelphia. Thursday they have the Rangers, and Saturday they have Pittsburgh. They will come back to San Jose on Monday, and that's another week of 4 games in 7 days. And then the last week of November, they have another 4 games. So we're talking about 12 games in the next 20 days. So it's going to be a heavy, heavy schedule for a team like the Sharks. There are a lot of home games later in the month, but yeah, this road trip is really the most grueling in terms of travel. Hopefully they get over that soon. In terms of just this week, looking ahead, they have the Devils tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And just looking at their stats right there, the Devils are obviously one of the teams that are expected to do very, very well this year. They are 5-3-2, which isn't remarkable, but they are better than the Sharks. They're coming off a 3-game winning streak with their best player, with points-wise, is Jack Hughes. He's got 8 points, 4 goals, 4 assists. Dougie Hamilton actually has the most assists for the team. This is definitely one I would consider a loss for the Sharks because the Devils are just a better team. But you never know, they could squeak one out. This is a game that I'm guessing Mackenzie Blackwood will start because he's playing his old team. This would be one of those things that could motivate him to kind of play better. Jacob Markstrom has been kind of underwhelming for the Devils this year. They're expecting to be really amazing. It turns out he came from Calgary last year, and the Calgary goaltenders are actually doing a lot better without him. So, yeah, we'll see if he kind of turns that around. But with the Devils, they have a better power play. They're 29.4% on the power play for 5th place. Their penalty kill is 84.1% for 8th place. Compared to that, the Sharks with their 19th place power play percentage of 17.4 and 13th place penalty kill percentage with 81.7. The goals for per game for the Devils are 3.65, which is 8th in the league, and their goals against is 2.82, which is 7th in the league. I'm going to say the Sharks are probably going to lose this one unless they somehow rally around Blackwood to get him his win against his old team, but it's probably a scheduled loss in this case. Now for Monday's game against the Philadelphia Flyers, they're kind of struggling right now, especially with Michkov. He's kind of in Tortorella's doghouse right now. He has missed a couple games. He was a healthy scratch, even though he had a really hot start. So it's looking like the Philadelphia Flyers are still that kind of bottom-feeding team. When it comes to their power play, they're 17th with 18.4%. They are 3rd place with the penalty kill with 89.8%. So with the Sharks struggling to get their power play goals, they may have a hard time scoring on Philadelphia. But at least if they do get into penalty trouble tomorrow night, at least maybe there's a chance they're probably not going to give up too many goals. In terms of goals for per game, Philadelphia is 24th with 2.53 and 28th goals against per game, 28th place with 3.6. They're coming off a 1-game loss in the shootout. They've actually had 2 shootout games the last 2 games they played. One against Florida, one against Tampa. They beat Tampa in the shootout, and then they lost to Florida in the last game. They are 4-5-1 total, where the Sharks are 4-6-0. Yeah, the Sharks are just a little bit worse than Philadelphia, but with this win, depending on how they do against the Devils, they could jump ahead of Philadelphia. Their top scorers are Travis Konechny, the Philadelphia captain, which isn't a surprise, 16 points in 15 games. So from 16 points to 8 points with Sean Couturier having 3 goals and 5 assists, and it kind of just drops after that. Michkov he's got 10 points, 4 goals, 6 assists. But he's got scratched the last 2 games. I would not be surprised to see him play against the Sharks. Tortorella has a chance, against a bottom-feeding team to kind of get him back into it. So I think these couple of scratches are going to see him play after all that, being in the doghouse, but we'll have to see about that. This one, I would say, should be a win for the Sharks if they get their stuff together. They have the ability to beat the Philadelphia Flyers. The Philadelphia Flyers are no wagon here. They do have a little bit more veteran presence. With Couturier, they're a little bit of a heavier team, so I imagine the Sharks will have to play that heavier type of game, which they are capable of doing. And with, Ferrero blocking some shots, who knows? Maybe he'll impress Tortorella, and maybe the Philadelphia Flyers may give us a nice package for Ferrero. Who knows? But I think this is a potential chance for a win for the Sharks. So we'll have to see, but you never know with the Sharks this year. And moving on to Thursday's game against the New York Rangers, they are 9-3-1. They're a wagon this year. Kevin Weeks made a tweet this week. He kind of made a subtle tweet showing the New York City skyline and said 11.5 million question mark. So it sounds like Shesterkin's probably going to get his money, whether it's 8 years, who knows about the term, but there is a rumor that the contract is going to have an annual value of $11.5 million. Of all the goalies in the league, he deserves it. He's been playing out of his mind this year. He has a .920 save percentage, one shutout, 2.62 goals against average. He's 6-3-1, and as of right now, you can't argue that he's the best goalie in the league. And if he wants to get paid, the Rangers are going to have to pay him. In terms of the top performers, Panarin has the most points for the forwards. He has 21 points, 10 goals, 11 assists. Second place is Lafreniere, who's having his breakout season. He's got 11 points in 13 games. He just got signed a long-term contract. That sounds pretty good. And he's just one of those guys that, you want to point, I think I talked about in the last podcast or the one before that, you want to point out to Will Smith and you want to complain about, he's his first year and how, he's not figuring things out. Lafreniere had a few seasons in the NHL already. He came out of a lockout draft, and he played with the Rangers right off the bat. This is his 5th season. And about last season, you could say he could actually start to figure things out. But you could say this year, he's really having his breakout moment. So just one of those examples just to say, hey, have patience with these young players for the Sharks, because you look at Lafreniere, he took a while. People want to write him off in a big market like New York. They're the type of market that they put a lot of pressure on these kinds of guys, first overall pick, and he panned out. So just want to preach patience with that. That's what I want to bring up with the Sharks there. But yeah, going back to the Rangers, Adam Fox is performing very well for them. He's got no goals so far, but he has 11 points for 11 assists. So this team is obviously a wagon. They're expected to go for the Cup this year. They're another contender. In terms of their power play percentage, they have 26.3% on the power play. They're 6th place with that. Their penalty kill is 1st in the league with 91.1%. Not faring well for the Sharks, again, who are having trouble scoring goals on the power play. With Celebrini back, who knows? But that's going to be a little bit of a struggle there. The face-offs are actually pretty close. The Sharks are 11th place with 50.8, and the Rangers are actually 12th place with 50.8%. So that's kind of interesting how that evens out there. In terms of the Rangers' recent games, they won against Detroit the last game, but they lost against Buffalo. But over the last 5 games, they're 3-2. So you don't want to sleep against the Rangers. You actually definitely want to be at your best game. We'll see who starts for that. I would call this a scheduled loss. The Sharks, they're not capable of being the Rangers, but in the league, they never know. They could upset the big team. Sometimes you see these bottom feeding teams just catch the better team on off day, or just that the better team just underestimates the lower team. So, scheduled loss, but if they win, I'd be extremely happy for them. All right, looking ahead to the Pittsburgh and Sharks game on Saturday. That'll be the last game of the week for them. The Pittsburgh Penguins are 6-8-2 so far. I mean, right now, obviously, by that point, they'll be a little bit different. But going into the game here, just from this view, the top point scorers are Malkin and Crosby. Malkin has 18 points, 5 goals, 13 assists. Crosby has 16 points with 6 goals and 10 assists. It's crazy to think these older guys are still carrying this team with the depth not being there. The Pittsburgh Penguins are expected to at least make the playoffs and kind of make a push, but it's clearly not the case. Even with Crosby taking a pay cut, it's pretty crazy to think maybe he might be traded in the next year or two if this team does not turn it around. He might ask for a trade to have a chance. Carlson is leading the defense in points with 10 points, 2 goals, 8 assists. He's obviously the typical Carlson we saw with the Sharks before his Norris win. Decent with getting points, but he's not doing his 100-point game anymore. It's not that level, and he still has defensive flubs. He is a -7, so again, I'm just grateful the Sharks got rid of that contract, $10 million off the books, so we could actually get this rebuild done properly. But it looks like it's not working out well for the Penguins. It sucks to see, but unfortunately, that's just how it is. Even though Crosby taking a pay cut with that next contract he signed, and he's underpaid big time. He's still underpaid for that team, and it's still not working with the guys they got around him. So yeah, with this game, I would say it should be a scheduled win for the Sharks. Pittsburgh obviously is still a little bit better, but with Celebrini back and maybe having a little momentum this week, I don't know if there's going to be other load management scratches for Smith or Celebrini this week because it is away games. But if they play this week and get a little bit better over time, maybe by the time they play Pittsburgh, they'll have some confidence in them, and who knows. Let's go to the team stats here. Pittsburgh is 15th place with 19.6% on the power play. And for the penalty kill, they're 5th place with 86.7. So it looks like this whole week the Sharks play teams that are really good at the penalty kill, which doesn't bode well for their already struggling power play. But we'll see how maybe they do. Maybe they're going to turn everything around and surprise us. Who knows? They are better at the faceoffs, which does not surprise me. And Malkin and Crosby are like the 1 and 2 centers. They're 6th place with 53.1% in the faceoffs. In terms of goals for, they're 18th place with 2.88, and they're 30th place in goals against with 3.69. So this is a type of game where the Sharks could throw in, that the floodgates open and score a lot of goals if they can. Probably not on the power play, but who knows? It's one of those games where Crosby and Malkin could just go full crazy mode and just score a bunch of goals and make the Sharks look silly. But it's also a kind of game where the Sharks could take advantage of the Pittsburgh's lack of depth and maybe get a win out of that. So I'm being optimistic here. I'm going to call that a scheduled win. So overall, just looking at the week with the Devils, Philadelphia, Rangers, and Pittsburgh, I would be ecstatic if the Sharks come out of this week 2-2, expecting, to then beat Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and they're expecting to probably lose New Jersey, New York. If they come out of this 2-2, that's a win. Anything better is gravy. Anything less, depending on the games, maybe you can dissect it and say, we learned some things here and there. But ideally, 2-2 would be the best thing for them. All right, that's the show for this week. I want to thank you again for listening, wherever you're listening from. Whatever you're doing, I really appreciate you just taking the time to hear me tear down the Sharks, because I love to do this, and I appreciate you wherever you are. If you want to catch up on me if you want to catch up on the Sharks with what we talk about here, I'm on Instagram, X, and any podcast you are listening from, you can listen to us there, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Amazon Podcasts. We're there. If you like what you heard, and if you don't like what you heard, leave a comment, leave a like, just show that any support I would appreciate. Tell me what you want to hear. Maybe there's things I can work on to get better for you. Anyways, let's see how the Sharks do this week. I'm very excited for this road trip. I'm pretty optimistic the Sharks are going to at least grow, and we're going to see Celebrini do some amazing freaking things, that's for sure, and maybe even Will Smith grow into himself and do even better things. So, we'll see you after their East Coast road trip.